I'm Merra Lee Moffitt, and I'm going to talk to you about get paid now. How to get paid earlier in your projects. So when you start working with a new client, it's always good to figure out, okay, where should the invoice be sent? Who can authorize payments, especially when you're dealing with a corporation? It may not be the person who signed the purchase order. It may be, maybe you're dealing with the husband, and really the wife pays all the bills. If you're dealing with, you guys do stuff in houses, and how they like to receive their invoices. Some people like being invoiced by email because then it doesn't get lost. Some people like it to be sent only to a P.O. box because that's where they collect their mail and take it to their accountant, collects the mail and pays their bills. How they confirm in an that an invoice is due and to be paid. So Don, I'm going to pick on you because it's my job, right? Because if you're doing a really big project, you might break it up into projects. You might say, okay, when we do if you're doing glass windows for like a large glass industrial building, you might say we're going to do when we order the product, it's so much down to start. When we've installed the first side of windows, we are going to bill the next phase. And when you're invoicing your clients, you have to figure out, okay, how do they want it? Do they want an invoice number? Do they need a purchase order number? How do they want the invoice to be referenced? And what I find, especially when I'm working with the smaller companies, is that invoicing and paperwork is not anybody's favorite job. So they put off invoicing. And what I find is that if you invoice early and often, it's much easier to get paid rather than waiting till the end of the month, or sometimes for people who are doing big projects, they might invoice. I usually recommend that they invoice every other week, like twice a month. Okay. So I'm going to have a couple of, how do we make it easy? When I'm working with the smaller companies, I try to get them to take credit cards. Because these days you can put a credit card reader on your iPhone, on your iPad. So if you're done working at a customer's house, you can say, it's all done. Look, I did this, I fixed this, isn't it really great? It's very easy for you to just, here's the invoice, pay it now, let me swipe your card. I have clients who, one of the companies I work with is a pool company. When they come out to open the pools in the spring, the clients have already paid. They've already billed their credit cards before the people come out to open the pool. So making it easy for people to pay and making it flexible for how they can pay, because if they can pay by PayPal, if they can pay by credit card, rather than having to write a check. I'm a business owner. If you have to wait till I can find a check and a stamp and an envelope and sit down, it's going to be a lot later. The customer wants to pay. They want to be done, and when you've just finished is when they're most satisfied. It's like, oh, thank you, and great, it works out. Great, it looks beautiful. Well, with the technology that we have today, it's very easy. There are apps for your iPhone where you can make adjustments to the bill and say, oh, well, the plumber, when the plumber comes, there's always tons of things he can fix, because while he's fixing the running toilet, you say, oh, well, I've got this drip over here, can you fix that too? And you know, I really need some insulation because it takes a long time for the hot water to come from the basement up to my shower. Do you got any insulation? And with the iPhone apps that you have, you can add those things right when you're on site, email it to the customer, and take the credit card payment. So and most of our small business owners, especially in the the home building area and the construction area, they're not that technically savvy, and you have to walk them through and get them started. But once they gotten through that process, it's much easier to get paid quicker. One of the things that that I work with, and it's, for those of you who have been in a business for a very long time, this might be already second nature. But when you're clear as to how much it is per month, how many meetings per month, how many visits, how many times you're going to come around, what things are extra, providing a discount for early payment and a penalty for late payment, a lot of times that will help set the stage for the clients, your customers, to pay on time and right away. I always recommend that when you're dealing with a new unknown client, that you call as soon as you have to. If you're not getting paid on the spot, that you call as soon as you've sent an invoice and verify that they got it. Especially when you're dealing with emails, because often I get very important stuff that goes into my spam filter. So if you call them and say, hey, I just wanted to make sure that you got it, because we've had a couple of technical problems, or and even in the mail, I got something in the mail that arrived 3 weeks after the person mailed it. And most people want to pay and can pay, especially when you've just finished your work with them. And calling right away after you send your first invoice lets them hear your voice, helps to build that relationship, and helps them remember that you're good work. Okay, get paid earlier, idea number 2. One of the vendors that I work with has a way for when they send me an invoice through an email that I can click on the link and pay right there. So it's easy. Oh, okay, I can just click, type in the information, and it's paid. And it was very easy from a user standpoint to pay that bill, and pretty easy for him to set up that mechanism as well. People like sending invoices by email, but I want to caution that it's not a panacea. As I mentioned earlier, I've had very important stuff go into my spam filter. I get between I get 200 to 300 emails per day. So sometimes if you send me something in the morning and I don't get to look at my email till the afternoon, it's 3 pages down. So you have to think about whether or not how it's going to be received. Again, verify the first time that you send it. Did you get it? Am I using the right email? Is it coming up? Is it coming up? Still a need for rebilling in terms of if you're you want to send your email invoice, say 2 or 3 weeks later. If you haven't gotten paid, you want to do that. You might want to say this is a courtesy copy, and if your payment has crossed in the mail, thank you again for your business, saying something very nice. But that's better. That's much better than the invoice got lost and you're thinking that the client doesn't want to pay, and so you're mad at them, and they didn't ever got the invoice. What I recommend for people who are doing email invoicing is that you make your invoice easily identifiable when they search. So it should have, October invoice from, this is Greater Reading Chamber of Commerce and Industry, right? Or October, plumbing invoice from my brother-in-law runs Blue Marsh Plumbing. So, as an example, so that people are when people are sitting down to pay their bills, and wait a minute, I know somebody sent me some invoices by email. It's easy to find. Again, verifying that it got sent to the right place, because most people have 3 or 4 emails. They have a work email, they have a personal email, they have their accountant or assistant might be the email that you're sending it to, and then the assistant leaves. So verify that you're sending it to the right place. And the other thing about sending it through email is that for most of us, we have on our iPads and our iPhones a list of the emails that we sent. So when you're out and about between projects or between meetings, and you're calling to follow up, you have it at your fingertips on your iPhone or your iPad, and you can email it again. If someone says, oh, I didn't get it, can you send me again? Additional tactics for getting paid earlier. I recommend twice a month billing, using tools like QuickBooks Mobile Invoice, having a regular checklist review so that you are keeping track of all of the extras that you did for your client. With many of my clients who do regular services, I coach them into setting up a regular auto pay through the bank, and that's how anything where I have one client that's an event planner, and she invoices her clients every 6 months. Well, by that time, it's a very large bill. Whereas if she sets them up, I have her set them up for monthly auto pay. So she was able to raise her prices a little bit because it was only 1/6. So if it was worth, for example, her advertising was, say, $1,200 a year. It was very much easier to have it be $115 a month to her vendors and set that up through AutoPay. And then you don't have to invoice, it's automatic. Also, when I'm dealing with people who are setting up, say, a monthly service, you have them start by taking a check for the first month, which I did this with one of my clients that does computer consulting and has a monthly maintenance service. Well, he was signing you up, and originally they were invoicing you at the end of the month, but I had him start with, you pay for the first month now by check, and then we start invoicing, and he set up the auto pay too. Especially in his case, he's having to buy often hardware and software to get his clients up to speed, because he's upgrading their systems to set up their backups, to bring their software up to rev. So he's got out-of-pocket costs every time he takes on a new client. And that cycle took his break-even down from 4 months down to 3 months. So my next topic is to kind of delegate and automate wherever you can, because most of us do not like doing our invoicing on a Sunday night, which is about when we would get to do them. And I kind of talked about a deposit to start the project. That's in some fields, that's a way to find out whether the client is really serious. So here's my get paid earlier. Number 3, set up the auto pay setup for a small business. Here's an example of one that we've set up in terms of You know, if you're filling out the form, attaching the void check, you send it into your bank and they set it up. The bank that I use charges no fees at all to set that up. Completely reduces the need to invoice. It's saving my time, it's saving the client's time, and actually I find that it keeps them on the program longer.